My name is Zakira, and you are listening to the Living Legacy Podcast. I am a brand cultivating strategist, a cancer survivor, and a camera saved my life. In this podcast, we'll be sharing stories of the various connections that I have as a professional photographer, featuring women that I admire. And lo and behold, you never know, I may interview some of my favorite men. In this podcast, you will learn about professionalism, you'll learn about business, you'll learn about travel, even African travel, as well as how to deal with the highs and lows of life and marriage. I have traveled to 10 countries so far, and now it's my turn to teach you and inspire you to step outside of your comfort zone. This episode is how I met my husband. So I briefly talked about it in the very first episode. So if you haven't listened to that yet, I actually have been married this year as of 5 years on July 16th. And this episode is actually being released, if I'm not mistaken, on the anniversary date of our engagement. This episode is also the season ending episode. Now, it's going to be a busy summer in the Denver household, and I know that we all need breaks sometimes. So this episode is going to end the first season of Living Legacy Podcast, and I'm so excited to be able to say that because it took me so long, 2 years to be exact, to actually start the podcast. And so I want to thank you all so much for listening. And if you haven't listened to all the episodes, you now have 18 episodes to listen to, as well as a couple of episodes on other ladies' podcasts that I had the option to be a guest on. The first one is Sisterhood of Limitless Living with Dr. April Moreno. And the second one is Embracing Intensity with Ayura Remember. I know that in my intro, I talk about how much I travel, how much I travel. So just know that the first episode of the new season, which is probably going to come back in or around the fall, is going to be all about travel. So I've talked briefly about it in each episode with each interview I have, as well as the episode that was entirely about Operation Cross South Africa. But that wasn't all 10 countries. There's a lot more where that came from. So but when this season comes back, it's gonna be a lot more about travel. But hey, of course, be sure to send me an email to let me know what other topics you do want to hear me talk about, or you want me to find someone to have an interview with about. So you can send me an email at zakiranayar@gmail.com. You can also leave a review in Apple Podcasts, and I'll be able to see it there. Over the course of the years, I have done blog posts. So it may still be up there. If you go to my website, zakiranayar.com, you will see that the first year I had a post talking about what I've learned in the first year of marriage, and I did it again for the second year, but then stuff went left. Year 3 and 4 and 5, I just completely forgot. But I'm here now for year 5 to just talk about 5 things, that I've learned since I've been married. There have definitely been a lot of ups and downs and lots of changes. And there truly are seasons in a marriage, just like there are seasons in life, Even though it wasn't a part of our vow, there is the part of the wedding vow. There's a reason why, they say it's in sickness and in health, and for better and for worse, because it can get really, really good, and it can also get really, really bad. So, this episode is if you've always wanted to just, you want to get married or you are married, and us married people, it's like a completely different community, compared to, no offense to my single ladies and men, but it's a completely different community. So when other married people come together, it's like, ooh, someone else like me, someone else going through the same thing that I'm going through. One of the biggest things that I did learn is not to lose myself. I believe, now that I can think back on it, our hardest year so far was because I was not prioritizing myself. How can I adequately prioritize the marriage if I'm not prioritizing myself? If I'm putting my husband first, I'm making sure that he has his each and every need met. But what about me? There's I was featured in a podcast recently. If you're able to check it out, it's called Embracing Intensity. So you can go to embracingintensity.com and look for the one that features Zakira Demba. It's episode 131. But I realized that I said a quote on there, something like, in order for me to help keep the fire burning, I have to be able to put more wood in the fire, right? So that means more self-care. That means more food, more things of what makes me, Zakira, the wife, happy. For better or for worse, it's also part of the vows. But not many people really fully think about the worst parts. You think about the worst that you've been through, and you think, oh, I can make it. It'll be all right. But, there are so many situations on social media that people can easily comment on. And if they have not been through there, they know what their opinion is going to be. But it's so different when you go through a situation that you never imagined that you would be going through. And then you really have to, at least in my case, I'm more empathetic to those who do go through that situation, because it's like, you know what? I'm not even going to judge you because I know what a hard decision it is, And I'm going to be honest, there have been plenty of times where, mainly me, because I'm the one that grew up in an environment where either no one got married or no one stayed married. So I was the one who would easily and unfortunately say it out loud, that I wanted to throw in the towel. But my husband didn't grow up in that era, didn't grow up in that type of cultural environment. So he says it, feels it, thinks it less than I do. It's really true that you only actually have 3 people in your marriage. You, your husband, and God. Now, yes, this may be a bit of more of a religious episode for you, but it's true, because thank goodness I have good in-laws who are not trying to be that 4th person. Because I know it's very common. There's some mother and father-in-law that are just so deeply involved because they love their child so much, or even sisters and brothers-in-laws who are just so deeply involved, because maybe they raised your own partner, your spouse, so they feel deeply connected more to him or her than to you. But I mean, the thing about it though is when the going does get tough, I will admit, because I have such great in-laws, sometimes yes, I will consult with them, during the hard time, because they're all married, so they've also been married longer than us. So one, they can talk to us from a marital perspective. But 2, they do sometimes know a few more things about my husband that I don't, because they did grow up with him, but I'm the one that lives with him on a daily basis. So I have to gauge it as far as how much I do consult with him on the problems that we do have, because sometimes they don't even know him as well as I do. Patience is definitely hard. Patience is definitely important. Now, it's hard for the both of us because we are both fire signs. I am a Sagittarius, and he is an Aries, but we're both, I'm born on December 20th, he's born on March 23rd, but we're both on the cusp or the verge of a new sign. So for me, I'm right there on the sign the day before the Capricorn, solstice, and he's a couple of days after the Pisces solstice ended. So for me, I really thought I was a patient person. I've always been told I was a patient person by family, by friends. But once you get married, it truly is. You're seeing a reflection of yourself. I literally feel like I married the male version of me, so I see the younger version of me in him sometimes. So it's like, okay, I think I'm patient, or I think I'm this, I think I'm that. But then I see him do the things that I know I did that gave my mom a headache when I was growing up. It's like, oh, okay. It required me to take a step back. Now, if you listen to my previous episode, you'll hear us talk a lot about therapy and a lot about the immigration process and also about marriage, because the therapist that was interviewed, Miss Jumi, she just talked about how much changes she was going through through the immigration phase, at the same time of getting used to a new culture, new environment, as well as getting used to being married. So I really love that episode. I really love that interview, not only because, ironically, she happens to have the same birth date as my husband, but it was a very similar situation because she's from West Africa as well, and she too had to learn how to adapt to a completely new environment. She shared a lot of great gems. So if you listen to the previous episode, then you can learn more about the immigration process and how difficult it really is. Now, I've traveled a lot. I've, been to 10 countries as of now, and I've stayed in a country 30 to 60 days at a time. So I understand how it feels to be the minority in a country where there's a language you don't fully know, there's food you're not fully familiar with, and the whole 90. But it's a completely different situation when someone's migrating to a new country compared to traveling to a new country. So at least I could say I was able to be empathetic in that way, but it does get difficult, because there are just so many things that you never really know what's going on, especially with men. Men don't talk about things as much as women do. Men don't talk as much as women do. So that's where patience becomes more important, because your patience is being tested by someone who knows your buttons, your weaknesses, your strengths, and your love language are very different and very important. You may have grown up differently culturally, which is another thing for me. Even though I am an American, I consider myself part of many different cultures. So I'm multicultural, but it's not the same culture as the one my husband grew up in. So you literally have to, going on to the next tip that I have, you have to communicate. Communication can be challenging at times, especially for us, because we are both independent spirits. So we're so used to doing things on our own, fending for ourselves for so long. And at least for me, sometimes I'm like, there's no need to communicate. I can read his body language. He can read my body language. But other times, we don't really realize how important communication is to one another. Even though sometimes language barriers do get in the way, all in all, we end up both saying the same thing. It's just reworded differently. It's just said in a different way. Because English is not my husband's first language, but English was my best subject in school. So it can get interesting sometimes. And then my mom, she made a joke. She was like, okay, I'm just trying to figure out how y'all going to make this work. Because there's one person who barely speaks English, and then another person who's hard of hearing. So how do y'all even make this work? So the next thing is respect. Aretha Franklin, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Everyone has a different definition of what it means to them. But for me, the most important thing about respect is letting the person be who they are. They didn't come into a marriage to be changed. Obviously, yes, as time goes on, they will grow on their own time. If you're married to the right person, you will grow naturally. But the thing is also to just allow the things that make you different to mesh together well, and to help you become more aligned, to help you grow into the person you are meant to become. Now, for the fun part of how we met. So it's so funny. I mean, God's plans are always bigger, always better than what you dream of, what you imagine. So this was 2014, and there's a friend of ours, actually, we have mutual friends, and there's a friend of mine who I met through Operation Crossroads Africa. At the time that I was going to Ghana, she ended up going to the Gambia to volunteer for 2 months in the summer. And we all get to meet, even if we weren't traveling to the same country together, we all got to meet at orientation in New York. And our Operation Crossroads Africa is like the progenitor to the Peace Corps, the short version of the Peace Corps. So we all kind of met together, then we would disperse into our countries. And then we got in touch after we each came back. Thank goodness for Facebook. We got back in touch through Facebook. And this was before I even moved to the Washington, D.C. area. So we were still in touch while I was still living in Florida. Then by the time I did end up moving to the D.C. area, we got to see each other a lot more because she lived in Richmond, Virginia. And she bragged so much about the Gambia. She loved the Gambia so much to the point where I was like, okay, well, one day I want to go too. And I guess this would maybe fast forward 2 years. I was able to finish up school. I was studying photography in D.C. and finished up school and then moved back home to Tennessee, which is when my parents decided to retire. And I sent her a message saying, okay, well, I have, some time on my hands. I have some money on my hands. I think I'm ready to go to the Gambia. Can you help me, with accommodation, with all of those things? And she ended up marrying a Gambian. Now, this is a Gambian that she met during her stay. So the great thing about Crossroads Africa is because you're in a rural area, so you really get to interact with the locals. So she got to do just that. And it was one that just fell in love with her and she fell in love with him. And so long story short, they ended up getting married. So she ended up asking her husband, okay, my friend wants to go to the Gambia. How can you help her, with all that? So little did I know that her husband would connect me with his best friend. I ended up getting a Facebook friend request from somebody. It was just, I knew he was West African. I'm like, oh God, because I have had I had my time of, being in Ghana and having all these just men just want to blurt out, all right, I want to marry you. And I know deep inside of them, it's, I want to marry you for a visa to come to America, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, who is this guy? And because I saw that he was a mutual friend of our friend, a mutual friend of my friend from South Africa, Starlene. So then I was like, okay, who is this guy? And so she was like, oh, he's my husband's best friend, and he was around. He's very helpful during our trip in Crossroads. He was very helpful during our wedding. So he's a nice guy. You should talk to him. But of course, be careful. She was like, of course, always be careful. So she's always that down to earth person. Like, okay, I mean, he's a nice guy, but just tread lightly. So we connected first through Facebook and then communicated every day on Facebook. Initially, I didn't accept him. Now, he sent me the friend request, but I just kind of let it hang there for a little bit. And then one day, I don't know what it was. I was at home at my parents' house, and I saw it again, and I decided to accept it. And then as soon as I accepted it, we communicated like every day. And we eventually Skyped. I don't remember how long it took us to Skype, but it wasn't until our first Skype call that I thought, once I saw him and saw, his handsome smile, and I was like, there's something different about him. Like, I think he could be the one. But he knew immediately. But I knew also it was different for us because, again, like I said, men have easily said, oh, I want to marry you. But I'm like, I just knew that the way he said it, it was different. He's genuine about it. So honestly, I don't know. I was literally just kind of trying to play it tough. And we, kept in touch. And then I feel like I told him for the first time, like, okay, well, I'm coming to the Gambia. But I think as the years go by and as I think about it, I really think his best friend was trying to be a matchmaker. So he knew that he knew that I was going to the Gambia and, just kind of played along with it. But anyways, we communicated for about 3 months before we met in person. So we often use, technology. We use Facebook Messenger, we use Skype. I don't remember if we used WhatsApp at that time, probably. But yeah, so we communicated for about 3 months. And once I arrived in the Gambia, I'll never forget, he worked at the airport. So he was able to literally be there on the runway to meet me as soon as I got off the plane. He says he didn't see me first, but I saw him. I intentionally was looking for him at the top of the plane because he did tell me that he would be there. And I saw him at the top of the plane. And I don't know, I kind of acted shy. I guess we both did. And it was just a memorable day of he literally picked me up from the airport. He had his friend pick me up from the airport. So I got to meet his friends on the first day. And I stayed with his family, his sister. It was him and his family who really took me in and took me to all the places I wanted to visit to, because my intention, because I knew I wanted to go to the Gambia before I even met my husband. So my intention was, okay, I want to go to the Gambia, I want to photograph, I want to maybe teach. So I had all these plans, and I told my husband it too, so he helped me to fulfill these plans. But little did I know that this trip ended up being almost a personal discovery for me. I mean, we clicked the first day we met. I met his family like the second day, and I just felt safe and I felt comfortable with him, and we knew how to have fun together, make each other laugh, and it was a bonus. Maybe the biggest thing of all was the fact that he was a Muslim too. Now, the thing about our religion, Islam, is that men can marry a woman that is Christian. Sometimes they convert, sometimes they don't, but they don't have to. But when it comes to the women, it's kind of required for the men to convert. But I have seen in my own friends' relationship that if they don't convert for their own personal reasons, that they just say they converted because I just want to marry her, it doesn't always work out that way, because it's just a complete different life-changing decision. So if a man gonna convert for a woman, that it isn't always going to work out. You got to love the religion first. But anyways, it was a bonus for us that he was a Muslim, and the Gambia is a predominantly Muslim country, so that was a bonus. And I knew for sure that I wanted to marry a Muslim, even though I had my ups and downs with practicing the faith, because my parents converted and none of my family members are Muslim. It's just me, my mom, and my dad, so it gets hard sometimes. But I knew that was a bonus. I'm like, you know what? If anything, we have the same love for God. That's the most important thing. That has been the key thing to really keep us going, because I also feel like you never really know how strong you are until your strength is being tested. Now, for the engagement story. Now, culturally, there really aren't exactly engagement periods or yet alone engagements at all. So, I had, my husband's word as soon as he said it, both in a Facebook message and again on Skype of he wants to marry me and he know he's going to marry me. But I feel like it was still sweet of him to plan out a surprise of getting me a ring. He got me a ring. And the day that we got engaged, we had a bunch of fun activities that day. So that day we went monkey feeding. So in the Gambia, there's like this monkey park, and those monkeys are so greedy. But it was so much fun though. If I'm not mistaken, the same day he's on a soccer team at his job at the airport, and they had a soccer game. So right after the engagement, they won. They won a championship game. But then he also took me we went to an alligator park. So literally just like what it's not alligator, crocodile. It was a crocodile park. And just like it sounds, there's a park with a bunch of crocodiles that don't move. So, of course, me being from Florida, I mean, I'm used to something like that. So there's a photo of us he was afraid to touch him, but somebody got a photo of us, me just kind of grabbing his hand like, it's okay. So we went to an crocodile park. And then we also just really spent time with his older sister. So she lives like near like the beach area in the Gambia. So we went to go spend time with her. Now, we picked out the ring together. So I knew that it was happening soon. But it was just, I didn't know the day that it was going to happen. I didn't know until we got to his sister's house that that's the day it was going to happen. Now, he had one of his best friends kind of with us all day, every day that day too, which was kind of different from the other days. So I knew something was going on. So then, it happened. I mean, we had a video recording of him just basically actually putting the ring on me. Now, I was carrying the ring in my purse the whole time. Like, I don't know why. As soon as he got the ring, he was like, okay, just keep it in your purse, don't touch it. Keep it in your purse and don't touch it. So, then, the day he was like, okay, take the ring out, give me the ring. I was like, oh, it's happening. So that was, I believe exactly 5 years to the release of this podcast. But yeah, that was great. And so again, there is no such thing as much of an engagement period in our religious culture. So we did, post it on social media, obviously after, we have told my parents, we have told our close friends, and then we did eventually, post it on Facebook, and it was so amazing. There was nothing but love. Everybody was like, yes! So then, we got married like 2 weeks later. We got married about almost toward the end of my 1 month stay. I stayed in the Gambia for about a month. And toward the end of my 1 month stay, we got married at a courthouse. And it was beautiful. I had a customized dress. It was white and blue. And we were matching African style. And it was nice and intimate. See, I always thought I wanted to have a big 100 people plus wedding. And I still do, in a way. I mean, I kind of want a vow renewal where I can have like more of my people come together. But at the same time, for that elopement, I would say, it was small and intimate. It was perfect for us because we're both kind of like intimate people. So we don't want the whole shebang. So it worked out that way. But the hard part was, yes, it was hard at first because my husband is a West African immigrant. And because he only really met my parents through Skype once, that wasn't enough for them to feel certain that I'm making the right decision. So that was hard at first, because at first I did not necessarily have my parents' full support. So that was hard at first. Now, my mom was more understanding because she had been married. I think my dad was her third marriage. So she had been married also to a West African before. So in a way, she was more understanding of elopements, of just simply, getting married. But my dad, it kind of took him a little while until my dad was able to meet him in person to really, I guess, forgive. Because I'm like his youngest daughter, so I understand how he felt. He really wanted a part of that. But as the time went on, I kind of realized that it ended up being almost a trend in the family that I just so happened to almost follow. Like, all my siblings who are married, the parents were not there. So, of course, it was not intentional because I didn't even realize that. And it just, I think the thing is of both my husband and I, we are strong about following God's time. Not necessarily our time, but more so God's time. But the good thing is that, I guess I could say we were able to make it up to them, because as soon as my husband did arrive, we did have an Islamic ceremony. So my mom was there, my dad was there, they were there as witnesses. We had the imam, or the, minister, pastor, who knew me as a child. So he was the one who officiated it. So, that was nice. And then we're supposed to have other witnesses. So the other witnesses were whoever was also at the masjid, because it was after the Friday prayer. So we had a couple of other witnesses, and they were male witnesses, but at least they're married, so they were able to also give words of marital advice. However, in attendance at the wedding was of course my husband's friends and family, but as far as who was there for, I guess, my side of the friends and family, on the plane, I happened to travel at the same time as the group, the Operation Crossroads Africa group that was volunteering in the Gambia that summer. So it was like, in a way, I was also there with the Crossroaders. So I got to see them, check in on them, help check in on them while they were volunteering in a different part of the Gambia. But I also invited them to our wedding. So I knew them, and their group leader happened to be, my auntie, the Jackie Kakembo that I got to interview in episode 3 of Operation Crossroads Africa. So she happened to be the group leader that year and was able to be at the wedding. So, that was great. I was able to have someone that my parents knew, at the wedding. We barely had a honeymoon. It's kind of funny. I remember hubby saying, we went to Senegal. We went to Senegal, I think, a week or a few days before we got married, because I wanted him to meet. I wanted to see Senegal. I wanted us to travel together, because they say if you, when you travel together and you can survive a trip together, then you're on a good path. You can survive, a marriage. So I wanted us to travel together. I wanted to see, how well or don't well we do. And, we traveled together just fine. And he ended up meeting some of, one of my mom's friends, who is Senegalese, who was in America for a while, and ended up going back to Senegal. And then one of my dad's friends, who is an American, but lived in Senegal for a while, because he was doing missionary trips. So he got to meet both a friend of my mom and a friend of my dad. So I feel like, in a way, he did meet my parents through meeting them. So, but of course, my husband was like, we should be taking a trip after we get married. So it can be like a honeymoon. So in a way, he's right, because now I feel like I don't know if we ever actually did take a honeymoon. We took a trip before we got married, but then we literally only had about a week, maybe not even a week, together after we got married. So I feel like it wasn't until he arrived to the U.S. that we took, we got to travel together a little bit. We got to go to a few U.S. cities together, such as Atlanta, which is like a hub of many Gambians. We went to Richmond so we can both see our mutual friend that we haven't seen in years. He went with me to my dad's side of family reunion when we had it in Ohio. So we've been to Ohio. We've been to Florida together for my doctor appointments in Fort Lauderdale, as well as to Tampa, Florida for my best friend's wedding. we came to the Nashville area together before we moved to the area. So we were living, I'm so grateful for my parents because it was also able to help him with ease as far as getting used to the U.S. because a long distance in any relationship is hard, but it's even harder with a spouse that you have and you have to go through the immigration process with. My parents allowed us to stay with them for a little while until we got ourselves kind of on our feet, and it also made it easier for him to settle into the U.S. because it's so easy for many families or even just people who come here to the U.S., they come here by themselves and they don't know anything, don't know anyone. So, he was blessed to have family, to be able to help him learn how to drive, help him learn about the food and practice his language a little bit more and get a new job and all the tough stuff that we take advantage of. We forget about that. We're so used to all these things being done for us that we forget that it's almost as if a baby taking the first step again. They literally have to start all over. I kind of wish we did have more time together, but at the same time, our journey is meant to be as it is. So we really had a whole year apart due to the immigration process. So we didn't actually, sometimes, even though we have been legally married 5 years, sometimes I reduced it a year because we weren't living together for that first year of marriage. But we are finally done with the immigration process after about 5 years altogether. I joke that when you marry an immigrant, you're basically marrying the U.S. government because of how long you're involved with the government and how much money you have to send to the government and how much information, how much privacy is invaded because you have to prove your marriage to the government because of the world of scams. But yeah, so the immigration process can be long, can be financially draining, can be emotionally draining, but the most important thing with that, it didn't matter where he's from. It's just we shared the same moral values. We shared the same faith. And we shared, a love for each other, that is growing by the day. And again, you never really know how strong you are until you're down to the wire of making that life-changing decision. Well, this was a long episode, but it goes to show how, how much I love my husband and how in love I still am. And yeah, I hope you were able to learn a lot. I wasn't just sharing my story just so you can know my story just to be nosy, but I hope you did learn a lot. Patience, communication, respect, not to lose yourself, and that there are seasons in a marriage. And, marriage is a beautiful thing. So if you're not married, I hope you do get married. If you're still married, I hope you stay married. Did I miss anything? Are you married and you have other tips you want to share? Leave them in a comment and a review so others can see them and I will see them too. Thank you for listening to the Living Legacy podcast. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and download so you don't miss the next episode. If you want to learn more, you can visit ZakiraNayar.com. That's ZAAKIRAHNAYYAR.com.